Hey guys, welcome back for another week of J&M Sports Talk, episode 109. Hard to believe, another week of college football's in the books. We have a lot to talk about in this week's show, so we're thankful that you guys have joined us. First thing we want to do was recap some of the big games from last week. Started out on Friday, USC Washington State game. Jonathan, how did that one finish up?
Yeah. I don't think either one of us were surprised that much. I mean, I would say it was a big upset, but we both thought about this is going to be a really good, close game, and that's what it was. But it was good for Washington State. Let's say Luke Falk had another great game. That was probably his worst game of the season. He threw for over 350 yards, and then of course you got the defense played well, making USC look bad at times. Sam Darnold probably had his worst game of the year against that defense. So that's all to their credit. And then we also got the nice one of getting to hear Mike Leach talk after a game, which is a win for everybody. So what did you think it was?
Yeah, anytime Mike Leach talks, you definitely want to tune in. He mentioned college football and Woodstock in the same sentence, so that was a pretty wild comment. But you can't blame him. I mean, he was ecstatic. The fans rushed the field after that W. Yeah, we definitely weren't surprised by that. But what I was surprised by, really impressed by from Washington State was their run game. We know they have a good pass game, but their rushing game was decent against a good USC front. And their defense. Their defense shut USC down at times. And, Sam Darnold had a chance to win that game with one last drive, and they ended up forcing a fumble.
Yep.
So really impressed with that. I think that win will do a lot for them, Washington State. We'll talk about that later in the show.
For sure.
Surprising outcome with the Troy and LSU game, Jonathan.
Yeah, I enjoyed this. Both of my parents are Troy alums, so I had to go to some of the games when I was little, getting to go to some of them when they were playing smaller division. But yeah, it was so great for the Troy side of it. Great win. Yeah, the head coach Neil Brown, he was all for it. He was like, this is not a fluke. Troy's been around for a while. This has got a very solid program, and they should have did this in '08. They were in Baton Rouge and almost won the game then. So great win for Troy, but now we're back at looking at LSU like, what's going on in the Bayou? And it seems like it's the same stuff as last year and the years before. So
yeah, you question why they fired Les Miles because it's kind of the same old story. But LSU, they don't get up for these non-conference early games in the year typically. But yeah, Troy's a good team. I mean, they were ranked in the top 25 last year. Competed with Clemson, the national champion last year. So I don't think it was surprising to the extent that some of the commentators had. But definitely congrats to Troy. That's a huge road victory for them. Another game, the marquee matchup was Clemson traveling to Virginia Tech. Jonathan, how did that one finish?
You didn't get that upset, right? That's all it finished.
Missed on that one.
Nah, I mean, it does happen. Yeah, I was really disappointed. That we both talked about how much we really like Virginia Tech. They did all they could, but they had to play against Clemson, and every week this is another instance where we think we know where Clemson's at, and they take the next step up. We were talking before the show about how it seems like this might have been, I think at least, the first full game by Clemson. They've been carried early in the season by their defense. There's been a couple games where their defense has been okay and their offense stepped up. It seemed like this game it was a little bit of everyone stepping up. And this was their first full game as a team aspect. That's something I was impressed. And moving forward, man, where's Clemson going next? So what do you think?
Yeah, I'm definitely in agreement. They're one of those teams in college football that has progressed every week, I would say, Clemson. Funny thing about this game, Virginia Tech outgained Clemson on offense.
Yeah.
The difference in the game was the turnovers. Virginia Tech turned it over 3 times. Clemson didn't have any turnovers. So, I mean, say what it is, Clemson has really impressed thus far. Virginia Tech probably is the second best team in the ACC.
Oh yeah, they showed that they're legit in their conversation with Clemson. I mean, they scored more points than Auburn did against them. So that's something to say. So moving forward, I do like Virginia Tech moving forward with the conference, but still, Clemson's just a different animal.
Yeah,
still.
Clemson is just that much better. We'll talk more about that
Mhm.
later on in the show. All right, so Jonathan, let's move on to our Players of the Week segment.
All right.
So who did you like freshman of the week?
I actually went this week. I'm going with the All Freshman Awards show. So, starting off my actual freshman, I'm gonna give it to Marcus Jones, cornerback from Troy. He had 8 tackles. He had a pass deflection, interception in the game as well. He was a big part of Troy getting that upset in Baton Rouge. So, good job to Marcus. Go Trojans on that one.
Had to give a shout out to a Troy player after that victory. I'm going Kellen Mond for the second straight week. For the second straight week, he got an SEC victory. This time it was on the road at South Carolina. Really impressed with the direction of Texas A&M. He seems to be getting his feet under him. It'll be interesting to see how Texas A&M finishes with Kellen Mond. So he's a good runner, decent passer. Seems to be gaining some momentum there.
Yeah, I like that pick, bro, but that game was at Texas A&M.
Oh, was it?
Yeah, it was.
Okay.
They just had that fun story about the stadium's plumbing went out during the game.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So moving on, let's say.
Yep.
How about our offensive player of the week?
Offensive player of the week for me, Bryce Love. He set a Stanford rushing record, which they've had some good running backs there.
Yeah.
But he had 301 rushing yards and 3 touchdowns. He's already got 1,000 rushing yards. I think he's probably one of the top tier Heisman candidates thus far in the season.
I really love that pick you made there too. Piggyback off that, he leads the country in breakout plays as well for a player. Breakout plays they consider to be 15 yards or more. He's got 19 this year already. So about to hit. I'm sure he'll hit 20 this week. So I really like that pick. Going with my freshman theme this week, I'm gonna go with the one bright spot in Tallahassee. That's James Blackman. With lots to be said with the true freshman last week making his first start after all the drama going on with him missing games with the hurricane and him having time to prepare. But his first week he was real shaky. But this week I saw a lot of improvement that I really like. The skill set is still definitely there. He made some great throws. Really, accuracy for his deep ball is really impressive for a true freshman. But he made some better decisions this week. Some of those big decisions led to their wins. I'm going to give it to him. Even though his numbers, he only passed for 121 yards and a touchdown. And I think half of those yards were on that touchdown. So you got to like all they've been doing.
Yeah,
with him.
Similar to Kellen Mond, the thing about him is sometimes it's just getting that victory, doing whatever it takes to get that W.
For sure.
So definitely impressed with the road win early on in his career for FSU. All right, who was your defensive player of the week?
You know what? Going back to the freshman, still freshman, stick with the upset theme again. Jahad Woods, linebacker for Washington State. He led the team in tackles. How great Hercules Mutaafa is and the leader of that defense. But he was able to lead them in passes, leading tackles. He had 9 tackles, and he had a sack as well in that game and beating USC.
Yeah, huge factor in them winning that game, no doubt, for Washington State. For me, defensive player of the week, got to give it to the 3 Clemson linebackers. All 3 of them together all had double-digit tackles, 31 tackles between the 3 of them. So they were a dominant force. They definitely made it tough for Jackson to settle in.
Good for them to step in, though, to lead the team at once. We were talking for weeks about how great their defensive line is, but now their linebacking core is stepping up.
Yeah, I think the product, it all functions together. When the defensive line does their job, the linebackers can do their job. But really impressed with Clemson so far. All right, so what we want to do different this week is we've had 4 or 5 games for each team to kind of gauge who has the quality wins and judging seasons thus far. We want to talk about the state of the Power 5 conferences. Who's been the biggest disappointment thus far, and who's the best team in each conference that we feel like today, if we're judging by today.
Yeah.
So let's start in the ACC. Jonathan, who has been the biggest disappointment thus far for you?
it's got to be Florida State here. Not trying to rag on y'all, Florida State, but just where the expectation was, especially from even the conference standpoint. They're really expecting Florida State to be a team where even if they lost to Bama, that was going to be a big chance for the conference to show some of the depth that they have. And unfortunately, with Florida State not being able to be there, with a lot of that's losing Francois, they just aren't that team that the conference as a whole was hoping they'd be, to be that second great team. So it's unfortunate that it seems like this conference is now one good team and then the rest. They've got some really good teams in the middle, but there's such a big difference between their best and their second best. We talk about VT's Virginia Tech's probably their second best team in the conference, and that game wasn't even close this week when you were watching the eye test. So that's probably the biggest disappointment is Florida State not being able to legitimize that upper half of their conference.
Yeah, biggest disappointment for me, I actually went with Louisville.
Mm-hmm.
You talk about the reigning Heisman Trophy candidate coming back to school. I mean, I would have thought he would have progressed more as a passer. The offense would be more dominant.
Mm-hmm.
So not impressed there. And then their defense hasn't been able to get off the field at times this year. That Clemson game, that was a really disappointing game for Louisville. I would have thought they would have competed, if not won that game.
Mm-hmm.
So Louisville thus far has been a disappointment in the ACC. They're not. I don't even think they're better than Virginia Tech and several other teams in the ACC.
Yeah, they were another one of those teams that last year was one of the torchbearers of the top of the conference, and yeah, they're not living up to their expectations either.
Yeah, I think Todd Grantham leaving to go to Mississippi State, that definitely affected the defense. But
for sure,
we'll talk more about that later on the show. They've got a tough game against NC State this week. Louisville does. Now let's talk about some positive stuff in the ACC. So we're both in agreement. We've talked even in this show a lot about Clemson. We both agree that Clemson is head and shoulders above any other team in the ACC, and seriously the country too.
Oh yeah, right now the season ended today. They're number one by far. Sorry, I know no Bammers are out there screaming their heads off watching this. Like, no, they've got to say, but Clemson, you just got to love everything, top to bottom, both sides of the ball. And like I said, the best thing about this team is they keep improving. So that's a good sign that they're continuing to get better. They're working on those things that make them better. So I can see that trend continuing as the season goes on for them.
Yep, for sure. All right, let's move on to the Big Ten. We're both in agreement on both of our picks here. So, Jonathan, who were we most disappointed by thus far in the Big Ten?
It's got to be Ohio State. Another team that, the expectations were really high. And they just, I don't know about you, but watching this team, after the Oklahoma game, it's like, that was the second week game of the season, but yet it just seems like something there is just off. We expected them to be this caliber championship team and being a factor in the Big Ten, and it's just something there is just off. I can't put my finger on it, but it's just for them they've got to be the biggest disappointment.
Yeah, I think you could trace it back to a couple things. We talked about it. JT Barrett, he's been there for a long time. I don't even think he would be drafted as an NFL quarterback if the NFL draft were tomorrow. So he's been really disappointing. They have had some bright spots, but they haven't outweighed the negatives. I was impressed that they were able to weather the adversity in their first ball game against Indiana on the road. But other than that, I haven't been really impressed with them at all. We talk a lot in comparing the conferences. What you do out of conference, and they had a chance to make a statement against Oklahoma at home, and they got beat by double digits.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, I think that factors in our disappointment of Ohio State. Now, there's plenty of time to right the ship, but I think all this really dates back to last season. In the playoff game, they got shut out against Clemson in the eventual national champions.
Yep. They've got plenty of opportunities on their schedule to make it up, but they need to, whatever it is, that switch that's still turned off, they need to hit it in a hurry.
Yeah, no doubt. All right, who do we like so far? Who do we think is the best team in the Big Ten thus far?
it's got to be Penn State. I mean, if there's any team in the country that's been as advertised preseason, it's got to be Penn State. There's a lot of teams that have done well and surprised. Even Clemson's a little bit of a surprise how well they're doing on. But Penn State was probably one of the few teams in the country early on that was, all right, this is going to be a great team, and they've done nothing but been great. And so you got to like Saquon Barkley and McSorley. I mean, we talked in depth of how great that ending to Iowa was. And I think that's still that's a big Heisman moment for both of them in the talks right now because it's still early on. But it's definitely got to be Penn State in the Big Ten.
Yeah, that road win at Iowa, that's been the most impressive Big Ten win in our conference this season. So that should continue. I mean, Penn State's got a great team. They don't have to face Michigan or Ohio State until much later in the season, I think, late October. So I would look for that trend. We're talking about today. There's a lot that could change in the next couple weeks. There could be some injuries, things like that. But right now, Penn State's been the best team thus far in the Big Ten. All right, let's move on to a surprising conference, the Big 12. Has there been any disappointments for you, Jonathan?
No. That's just the thing we were talking about earlier. If every team was to write a script like how they would like to see their team on the field, they've pretty much gotten their best case scenario. All the teams are playing great. Baker Mayfield found more targets. I mean, and then you got TCU who's playing great defense, and Kenny Hills, as advertises himself. I just really like everything that the Big 12 is doing right now. All their teams are playing really well. Probably the biggest disappointment for me, if they had to pick one, was the fact that OK State had to play TCU already. And just the fact that both teams are so good, one of them had to lose that game, but they're both in the top 2 or 3 in this conference, best teams.
All right, yeah, I'm in agreement with that. The Big 12 has been a huge positive thus far in the season. Yep. If I had to pick a disappointing team, I would say Baylor. We talk a lot about Art Briles and what happened there. The Baylor football program was a top 10 team just a few years back. It's crazy how far that they've fallen. But Matt Rule, he's got the program on the right direction, but they lost to Liberty early on in the season. They lost to Texas San Antonio at home. You just can't lose to those teams when you're in that fertile of a recruiting ground in Texas. So I think you could pretty much go out there half-hearted and beat those teams. So really disappointed with Baylor thus far, but they've shown some positive signs the last couple weeks. They competed last week against Kansas State, and they put up a really good fight against Oklahoma, who's possibly one of the best teams in college football. So Baylor's been disappointing thus far, but I think it just goes to show, the Big 12 in a positive light. They're trending upwards as well.
Right now, I might have them as the best conference. I know a lot of people, even though they may be preseason talking about the SEC again, but have another great year. But Big 12 might have the most top quality teams in the country right now.
Interesting. Are we recording this?
Yeah, we're recording it.
Okay, all right. We might revisit that during bowl season.
We'll definitely will. Right now, you gotta be.
Yeah, right now.
If you're the Big 12 commissioner, you gotta be nothing but happy right now with the way this conference is going.
That's true. We're both in agreement thus far. TCU has had the best wins. Yeah, for sure. You mentioned the Oklahoma State game on the road. That was the best victory.
That was a statement game, the way they really, they
took it to them.
Some people, if you've looked already on our Facebook, we've posted our top 10. That actually, even on a bye week, I moved them up from 7 or 8 last week to my top 4 because of how well OK State rebounded against Texas Tech. That just showed how good OK State was, and that wasn't just a one-time, maybe there's some issues there. We thought OK State might have had the TCU, but it's just how good TCU was. So that was my reason for putting them in the top 4 right now.
Yeah, TCU has definitely impressed thus far. Their defense has been really good, and their offense has impressed too.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so we'll see. They've got a big game this week against West Virginia. That's our marquee game, so we'll pick that game later in the show. All right, let's talk about the Pac-12. Who's been the most disappointing team for you in the Pac-12?
With of all the teams you can go with, I'd probably disappointment probably UCLA. Preseason they had a lot of hype that they might be that second team in their division that had
Yeah.
a chance, and so they have good defense coming in. And of course everyone knows about the chosen Rosen, and they've just been two teams all year. There's like Jacqueline Hyde, like one half you get one team, another half you get another. They've just been so inconsistent within games that you got to be disappointed in their efforts. If they've played like they have some halves all year, if they would have played the second half or even the fourth quarter of that Texas A&M game all year, we might be talking about one of the best teams in the country here. But yeah, they just can't put it together for a half or a game even.
Yeah, for me, I'm staying in the state of California,
Mm-hmm.
Southern Cal. We both had them in the title game in our preseason picks. Sam Darnold, he was hailed as the best quarterback prospect. Just haven't really seen the output. He's having very much a sophomore slump. They haven't competed consistently. A lot of the things that you were saying about UCLA could be said about USC. So although they had the disappointing loss against Washington State last week, I mean Washington State's a good team, but I'm more concerned about they struggled early on against Western Michigan at home. Just some of these close games, Texas. A lot of these games have been tougher games, but I would have expected more out of USC.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I've been disappointed in them throughout. They've been finding out ways to win games. So if you're USC right now after that loss, they're probably licking their wounds. What they need to realize here is they've still got the whole season in front of them. They only considering all the troubles they have, all of that they've struggled with. They've only had one loss, and with one loss, you can still even get in the playoffs. So if they take care of business, they're gonna have opportunities to make up for it. They definitely got a really good team. Sam Darnold's still a great quarterback, and he's still proven that he has the ability. Like last year, this could be that time for the turning point, and they went on that 9-game win streak. That maybe they can do it after just one loss this year, and everything's still in front of them. And then maybe they can get a chance to get a rematch against Washington State and can make up for that one loss to get in the playoffs. That's we were talking about the Apple Cup's probably going to be a big matchup for the conference. So that'd be a great opportunity if Washington State was to win that game and they face in the championship. USC could be looking with one loss and beating the team that beat them earlier in the year. You got to put them in the top four.
Yeah, and again, this is this point in time.
Right.
So a lot of the teams that we're high on right now or low on, they could completely turn the ship, and we would be talking about them at season's end. So
of course.
USC, I mean, they started out 1-3, losing their first two conference games last year, and they finished in the Rose Bowl. So I mean, I think that's definitely there. And they, like you said, they've only got one loss thus far, but they haven't been as impressive as they should with the talent that they have. So kind of a disappointing start to them. Now let's talk about the positives in the Pac-12. So who do you think's the best team today?
You know what? Right now it's a bit of a toss-up, but I'm going to slightly lean toward Washington here.
Okay.
I like their defense. Since 2014, they've averaged in the conference the best total defense since 2014. They're just consistently very good on the defensive side of the ball. And then, of course, they've got weapons on their offense as well for Jake Browning to play with. So I'm going to give the slight edge to Washington right now.
Yeah, that's a good pick. Washington probably has the best defense in the Pac-12. I'm going to go with stay in the state of Washington. I'm going to go with Washington State just fresh off that victory against USC. That was huge for their program. I think that'll carry them throughout the season. It's a very good win for them. They've got a tough game traveling to Oregon. We'll pick that game later in the show for this week. All right, let's talk about the SEC. They've been on the throne, especially dating back a few years, but as of recent, there's been a lot of conversation that maybe the SEC isn't the best conference anymore. Jonathan, who's been a disappointing team for you at the SEC?
Yeah, we talk about, it seems like this is a down year for the SEC. Some teams I thought, were going to be really good, like South Carolina, that just had some injuries that, it's disappointing because of injuries holding them up, and some teams just not able to put together. But my biggest disappointment would have to be LSU. And I'm not just talking about the Troy loss, because yes, that was a big loss. But they've got the Mississippi State loss of that too. But there's just a lot going on in that program that seems like it's continuing year after year that they just can't seem to figure out. And moving forward, a lot of it's too is the fact, you picked them as to win the West at the beginning of this year. They have such a high expectation, not only for themselves, but everyone else's for the conference to be, everyone says, oh, the SEC West is the best because that West division, Auburn, Alabama, and LSU are the top three. And LSU's not holding up their bargain to being that third team in the West right now. It might be Mississippi State right now might be the best, and they've not been that impressive.
Or Texas A&M.
Yeah, I'd say they're undefeated in conference.
Yeah, Texas A&M has righted the ship.
So if you had to ask me today, it's definitely got to be LSU though.
All right, so you're putting the panic button for LSU.
Oh, for sure.
All right.
As a team, yeah.
As a team, I've got the panic button for Tennessee. You texted me at the halftime of the Tennessee-Georgia game last week. Can you fire a coach in the middle of the game? I mean, that's a fitting comment. They probably should have lost their first game against Georgia Tech. They rallied and won that one in OT, but they probably should have lost that game.
Mm-hmm.
They lose a last-second Hail Mary against Florida. I mean, you could commit a penalty or something and just prevent them from scoring. Just completely outcoached. Fast forward to the next week, UMass. UMass is 0-5. They just started in FBS a couple of years ago. They're still building their program, and you beat them 17-13 at home. I mean, Tennessee has been wildly disappointing. They get shut out 41-0 in a rivalry game at home last week. I think the nail is in the coffin for Butch Jones, unfortunately, but Tennessee has not met expectations. They lost some talent, but dating back to last year, they didn't meet expectations.
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of hung over into this season. And Tennessee, I mean, unless they right the ship and they start doing things a lot differently, they're going to finish. They might not even make a bowl game.
Yeah, they've definitely got a high ceiling to climb to get back to where they should be. But at the end of the day, though, between the two, I still think it's LSU just because of the expectations. Still, though, I don't think anyone outside of Knoxville this year really expected Tennessee to be in the top 2 or 3 in the West. Where some people had LSU winning the West. I mean, East for Tennessee.
For Tennessee,
yeah. But yeah, as it so.
Yeah. Now we're both in agreement on the team that's impressed us the most. The team that we think is the best team in the SEC. We both have the Georgia Bulldogs. Jonathan, why do you have Georgia?
I like what they're doing a little more. I know a lot of people are like, oh, it's got to be Bama, but to me, maybe this is just someone just trying to not give them the crown right away because of their namesake. But you got to be impressed with how good Georgia's defense has been this year. And they've been consistently getting better every week. And they even lost their quarterback, yet it doesn't seem to matter. Jake Fromm might be better than Eason. Now, as I continue to be impressed more and more, which, he's supposed to be back. We'll see how things move forward with the whole what they do when Eason is 100% healthy. But for right now, it's got to be Georgia.
Yeah, Eason got some playing time last week against Tennessee. But yeah, Jake Fromm has been the shining light of their season. He hasn't wowed you with stats, but he does a great job of managing the game and moving the football and getting first downs. So he's had a few of the big plays as well. Either way you slice it, whether it's Alabama or Georgia as the best team, here's a stat. Okay, they've in their last 2 games, each team has only given up 3 points in 2 games.
Both conference.
Both conference. I mean, that is a miraculous stat. So both defenses are some of the best in college football.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of will their offense be able to match that level towards season end. That could, be pivotal in the SEC championship, and it could be pivotal in the Final Four if one of those teams makes it. So,
quick question for you though: if you had to pick who is the best just sole defense in the conference.
That's a tough pick. I mean, I think you even have to factor Auburn in there, how well that they've played. Either way you slice it, those three teams.
I would put a fourth team in there. UF defense has won 2 or 3 games for them.
They have. They've carried the weight a lot of games.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that's definitely a head scratcher there. I have to think on that one a little bit more. If pressed, I would probably go with Georgia today, just because I've been really impressed with them. But, they stopped Notre Dame, who has a pretty good offense on the road.
mm,
But if I had to pick today,
Yeah.
which all of those teams you mentioned have really good defenses.
mm.
All right, so that's kind of the state of the Power 5 conferences thus far, how Jonathan and I see it. Now we're going to do something a little bit differently this week. We're going to have a segment called Quick Picks, and we're just going to throw these games out there. They're all really good games.
Mhm.
We want to mention them in our show, but we're just going to give quick one-word answers in this week. So, Jonathan, let's start Georgia traveling to Vandy.
Georgia.
All right. Minnesota traveling to Purdue.
No, I got Minnesota in this one.
Okay. Arkansas traveling to South Carolina.
I'm going to go with South Carolina because it's at home.
All right. Missouri traveling to Kentucky.
I'm going to go with UK and not the Redcoats.
All right. California traveling to Washington.
I like Washington in this one.
All right. Kansas State traveling to Texas.
But I'm going to pick Texas getting the upset here. This is where they get their season going. I think they've had some partial games, but quick note, I like Texas moving forward.
Okay. Wisconsin traveling to Nebraska.
The Badgers are running wild.
And then Alabama traveling to College Station.
I bet Bama's second string scores more points than the first string.
Oh, wow. Okay, so not even close.
No, not even close.
All right, like Bama over A&M. Okay. All right, now let's get into our matchups. We're going to have more discussion on these marquee games. We got a good one on Thursday this week. Louisville traveling to NC State. Jonathan, how do you see this one playing out?
Yeah, we talked about it before. You mentioned Louisville is probably one of the bigger disappointments in the ACC.
Yeah.
I'm going to go with one of the bigger surprises of the ACC. I'm going to go with NC State. Not only because it's at home, but, I've noticed when Louisville struggled, it's because they've had trouble on the line against some really good defensive linemen. And NC State's probably got one of the best linemen in the conference. Bradley Chubb, he leads the conference in tackles for loss. I like that trend to continue, and I like NC State to win this one at home.
That's a good pick. This is a really tough game for me to pick.
Yeah.
Louisville, they've rebounded well the last 2 weeks. They've played some cupcake teams, and they really got the offense going.
Mm-hmm.
These Thursday games can be tough, though, for teams to get up for. NC State has had some really impressive wins. You talk about winning on the road at Tallahassee. They beat Syracuse last week, so they're 2-0 in the ACC.
Oh.
NC State, their quarterback hasn't thrown an interception, Finley. So I'll put some stipulations in there. Okay, if NC State doesn't turn the ball over, I like them to win this game. But if they make some turnovers, especially early on, I think that could hurt them, and Louisville would end up taking over the game. But I like NC State in a close game.
Yeah, you mentioned they're usually the Thursday nights are kind of crazy games. They tend to go to favor the home teams though, because those home crowds get a little more rowdier because it's a fun night. They know the nation's on them, and they want a good showing. So it's at home for NC State.
Yeah, so we're both going with NC State in that game. We'll see how that one plays out on Thursday.
Yeah.
All right, next game on the list is Stanford traveling to Utah, Pac-12 matchup.
I got Stanford in this one. This would be an upset, but I just really think the last 2 weeks in particular, they've really gotten things going. Love's been stepping up as the guy for them. That and then their quarterback situation's finally settled down a little bit. So I know they've lost a few games early on, but I like Stanford moving forward in the Pac-12 as a whole, and that starts with a big win here. This is the win that gets them to the Pac-25.
Yeah, I think this game is another one that's tough to pick for me. These Pac-12 matchups can be a little bit difficult. A lot of the teams are very similar, but Stanford has been running the ball well with Love, so I like that matchup. But they've struggled on the road. They won their first game in Australia against a Rice team that's not very good. Other than that, the last two road games they've come up on the short end of the stick. So I like Utah at home. I think they'll do just enough to win the game. Utah has a great home atmosphere as well. But I like for this one to be close. It should be a good matchup.
Yep.
All right, let's talk about an SEC matchup. We talked a little bit about this game before the show. LSU traveling to the Swamp. Jonathan, do you think LSU can rebound and win this game?
This is such a hard one because if you don't know, this is the cross division rivalry for both teams. LSU come from the West, Florida come from the East. Each team has a team they play every year, and this is always a dogfight for SEC. LSU's got so many problems right now they've got to work on. Florida's got a mess too of their own still, but I think they're figuring it out a little more. They're talking about the run game's a little better, and UF, I don't know. Sometimes I guess I'm gonna pick with them because they just win. There's no real rhyme or reason for how they win. They just figure it out to win. So I'm gonna give in now and just go with Florida.
Well, the thing is about Florida, like I said this, I think in a couple of shows back, until they lose and disappoint me, I'm gonna pick them every time.
Yeah.
It's just they seem to have the luck on their side. But I will say this about this game. LSU, they've been a disappointing team, no doubt, in the first part of the season. But look for them to fight on and compete in these SEC games. That's where they normally get up. So I wouldn't count their season a loss just yet. Certainly they've had a disappointing start, but this should be a good game still.
Oh yeah, for sure.
I don't think this one will be a blowout by any means.
If there's one thing UF has done this year, they've made games interesting. I don't think they've had a boring game yet.
Yeah, it'll at least be a good game. We can count on that. All right, let's talk. We talked briefly about this matchup earlier on the show. Washington State traveling to Oregon. Jonathan, there was some news and notes about Oregon.
Yeah, the last game they lost their running back Royce Freeman and their wide receiver Dylan Mitchell. I don't think it doesn't look like either one of them are going to be able to play this week. But their biggest news is Justin Herbert, the quarterback, broke his collarbone. He's about 4 to 6 weeks. So with that, this Oregon team, they're on the rise. I like the momentum they're going, but that's just a lot for them to lose. And I'm a little hesitant just with Washington State, as good as they are. They're going to be a little too high on themselves after that USC win. With that being said, I can count on one thing I know is defense travels well. So at least their defense is going to be there. They've got one of the better defenses in the conference. So I'm going to go with Washington State because of their defense.
Yeah, Washington, how do they deal with success in going on the road? Oregon, Eugene, that is a really hard place to play. The home crowd's going to be up for it. Oregon has been on the rise this year after a disappointing season last year. But in light of all the injuries that you just mentioned, I don't see Washington State not winning that game. So I've got Washington State as well.
Okay.
All right, let's talk about a game that was rescheduled from a couple weeks back because of the hurricane. The Miami Hurricanes facing FSU. This is a huge rivalry game, Jonathan. How do you see this one finishing?
Yeah, it's another one of the rivalries you just never know sometimes. Guys play the best games of their life for these rivalry games. And, if you're looking at it on paper and what we've seen so far, I like some of the progress Florida State's making, but I don't think it's enough. If they were playing them toward the end of the year, I might give them more of a chance here. But I'm going with Miami. I have them as one of my favorites in the ACC early on. They've done nothing but play well on defense. They went up to Duke last week, and they shut down one of the better offenses in the conference.
That's
in
true.
Duke. So I like Miami in this one. This is one of the games I had circled on the calendar why I thought they would do well, and this was going to be one of their big games, which it is every year. But I like them getting a big win here and projecting them forward So making their case for the Coastal.
Yeah, I like Miami in this game as well. Rozier, the quarterback, has really impressed me this year. He's managed the game well. He's put up some good stats. Um, you mentioned their defense. That's a scary thing. FSU's offensive line has been really disappointing. It's probably the reason that Francois got hurt, and it's part of the reason why Blackman hasn't been better on offense. He's been decent. He's done enough to get them to win a game on the road, but I don't see any way of Florida State, even though they're at home. I don't see any way of them winning this game. I like Miami in this one as well. All right, let's talk about an SEC matchup. Ole Miss traveling to Auburn this week, Jonathan. It's an early game. Who do you think will win?
Yeah, I think that the early games is probably one of the things. If there's one thing Auburn tends to struggle with early games. It seems to be their weakness a little bit at times. With that being said, I like the direction the offense is going. They're a lot more back to that run heavy style you expect from them, but they've got a passing game going. They've been able to get a good mix of the two. I like that trend to continue. The only thing I'm hesitant about is just simply the fact I don't know what Ole Miss team is going to show up. I mean, they've got the talent on the field. First of all, I don't care how good Bama is. Bama's not 63 points better than Ole Miss. That was one of those games where the score just got out of hand, and you could tell they gave in a bit. But I expect Ole Miss to have a little bit of pride and come in Jordan-Hare with a chip on their shoulder and make this a game. So I like Auburn in a closer one than people expect.
Yeah, this has been a close game over the years, dating back to Hugh Freeze when he was at Ole Miss. I mean, it's been very similar teams. But for me, the biggest matchup is Ole Miss's defense and Auburn's offense. I think that's the big matchup in the game. Ole Miss gives up 35 points a game on defense, so I like for Auburn to win the game for that fact. I think Auburn, you mentioned they're kind of trending upwards on offense, so I think Auburn's a safe pick here, but they tend to struggle in home early games. Auburn does.
But they'll definitely be relying on that defense that we talked about. You could argue they're one of the top 2 or 3 defenses in the conference and maybe top 5 in the country.
Yeah.
With that as well.
For sure. They only give up 11 points a game. Haven't given up more than 14 in any game this season. So
one of those was Clemson on the road. So, yeah.
Yeah, Auburn does have a good defense. All right, let's talk about another rivalry game, this time in the Big Ten. Michigan State traveling to Michigan. Jonathan, who do you have winning this game?
Yeah, one thing to note is the quarterback Spates going to be out for the game. He got hurt. With that, Michigan's got a good defense, but last week I actually got to sit down and watch a good bit of Michigan State's team. I know they had that bad loss against Notre Dame, but they played a great game against Iowa, who came off a tough loss to Penn State. It was one of those gritty Big Ten type games you expect. A lot of defense, not a lot of scoring, and Michigan State won by 10. So I like Michigan State in this game.
Yeah, I think this will be a similar game. I think it'll be a defensive matchup. I've been impressed with, in light of how much talent Michigan lost from last year's team, they've been able to kind of hold their own this season. They haven't been dominant, but they have had some good wins. You talk about that Florida victory the first game of the season. That was a good win for them. I like Michigan in this game because they're at home. I think this is going to be a really close game. It might go into the fourth quarter, maybe even a last-second field goal, but I've got Michigan in this game at home. All right, let's talk about our marquee matchup. West Virginia and TCU. We were talking about earlier on in the show how impressed we've been with the Big 12 Conference. This is probably, wouldn't you say, probably the second or third big game of the year in the Big 12?
Sure. When we're doing our preseason stuff, you actually picked West Virginia to make the championship game. I had them right there on my list too of teams that I thought that had a good chance, but this was one of those games I circled as because it was still early on and still weren't sure. This is one of the reasons why I gave TCU the nod, is because of the fact this game is at home for TCU. I thought both teams were going to be about what we expect them to be early on. Both have had some impressive wins and close ones, but at the end of the day, I like TCU. I think they're a top 4 team right now. They've been playing so great on the defensive side of the ball. They shut down Mason Rudolph and OK State's high-powered offense. And I expect the same. I wouldn't say no slight to West Virginia, but I would say OK State's offense is better than West Virginia's. So I'm going to go with TCU.
I'm going to go with TCU as well in this game because of the experience factor. Kenny Hill's been there a couple years. Will Grier, he's still relatively young in his college football career. I also like TCU's running game better than West Virginia's, and I like TCU's defense as well over West Virginia. So all those factors considered, and it's a home game for TCU, I think all that points to TCU taking this victory. But I wouldn't be surprised if West Virginia competed in this game, and it was close going into the fourth quarter. But I think TCU has a lot riding in their favor.
College game day is going to be there. There's going to be a lot of excitement. The road team sure love to spoil that kind of thing. So it should be a good game. I'm excited for it.
Yeah, really good week of college football coming up. We hope you guys enjoyed the games. We thank you for joining us for another week, and we hope to talk some more football next week.
Yep.
See you guys.
Later.